Hello, I'm Josh Hallam, and you are listening to Just Films and That. This is the podcast where we talk about films we think might be underrated, underseen, or we just wanted to talk about them. This week it was Alice's turn to pick, and she chose Wicker Park from 2004. So, let's see what we think. Alice. There's a park.
There is a park.
It's made of
South
wicker.
Park? No, a Wicker Park.
A parallel park.
Oh, very good, very nice.
Wicker Park. It's from 2004, so spoiler warnings to the guys at home if you haven't seen this. Alice, what is this film about? And why did you pick it?
Okay, so Wicker Park, so it's a romantic thriller. So Matthew is a young Chicago advertising executive played by Josh Hartnett who seems to have it all. He's got a high-flying job, a beautiful girlfriend whose relationship is apparently going so well that we see him shopping for engagement rings. What more could he ask for?
Oh.
But whilst out at a lunch meeting, he believes he catches a fleeting glimpse of his long-lost love, Lisa, played by Diane Kruger, who left him in slightly strange circumstances 2 years ago. He then puts his life on hold to try and find Lisa once again, and what follows is a tangled web of obsession, lust, mystery, and some pretty questionable behaviour from everyone involved. The film is a remake of a French film called L'Appartement, which is apparently loosely based on A Midsummer Night's Dream. So that is what the film is about. The reason I picked it, so as I am one to do, a film will just pop into my head out of nowhere, it feels like, and I think, oh, let's check out the ratings, see what's going on here. And had a little look at how it was doing on IMDb and Rotten Tomatoes, and one of the ratings I thought was devastatingly low, and I thought, well, hang on a sec.
Devastatingly low.
Devastatingly low.
You had to have a little minute after you saw it.
I was like, whew, have a sit down, have a little wander in the Wicker Park. And so then that was that then. So I was like, right, it's going on my list. And I thought, well, now's the time to do it. But also, having tried to find it to watch for this podcast and found it very, very difficult, I will also say, as well as it being underrated, I will also say that this film is underseen. So I had to watch this in it was a bad quality, but it was poor quality, Josh. I'm telling you now, it was difficult to watch.
Was it the same one I watched on YouTube?
On YouTube, it was fucking terrible.
Oh,
it was
like
bad.
It was like watching it outside of a house through a window, like a family were watching it on their TV, and you stumbled home from the pub.
Yeah.
And you've also not got your glasses, and the family are watching Wicker Park, and you think, I'm going to review this for a podcast.
Yeah, and it was really disappointing, right? Because I'm there willing to pay, right? I'm going on the street. I'm ready. I want to do it, guys. I want to pay for these films. I want the money to go to the right place and all that. So when you come across a film like this, similar with True Lies as well, where it just feels impossible to find it or impossible to find a good version of it, I was just really shocked. Also, I don't think it made its budget back as well. So it can fall into the underseen pile that way as well. So anyway, those are the reasons why I chose it. Josh, had you seen this one before? I don't think you had.
Alice, I hadn't seen this one. I hadn't heard of this one.
Okay, great.
So
good.
Let's crack on then. So it's underrated mainly, but also a little bit underseen.
I reckon so, yeah.
Okay. And we've both watched the same god-awful YouTube version of it.
So disappointing.
It is disappointing. That's, even Solomon and Gaynor managed to get hold of.
Yeah. I wonder what went on. Like, has someone lost the rights to it or something, and therefore, it can't go on Amazon or Now or anything?
Josh Hartnett, Rose Byrne, Matthew Lillard, Diane Kruger.
Matthew Lillard. I forgot he was in this, I forgot
Shaggy
he was in it.
himself.
Yeah, I know.
And you can't get hold of it.
Yep, very strange.
Mad. Sort it out, people who own the rights to Wicker Park.
Well, it's an MGM film, so you would have thought, it's not some, tiny indie
It's not, is it? It's not a little indie film.
It's
it's got a pretty big cast in it and stuff. But let's crack on then. So you've watched it again, you've seen the ratings.
Yes.
What do we think? Lay it on me.
So I actually thought it was all right, I can see the flaws, I can see it's not perfect, but I did, and obviously it was difficult to enjoy because it was so blurry, but I think it was better than I thought maybe it was going to be because I'd only seen this film a couple of times when I was in college and we rented it out of our library in college, right? That's how he got hold of
remember
it.
that. Remember
So even then, right?
borrowing
even
films
then,
at the college library.
I know, right? I know. So I did quite like it, and I think I liked it better than I thought I would, and it made me think, yeah, I do still think this is underrated. So I'll talk about some of the main things that I liked about it first. So I do like the concept, and I like the story, and at times I think it holds the mystery quite well and unravels the mystery quite well also, whilst dancing between the different perspectives of the different characters. As is the case with these sort of films, all the characters are connected somehow, and I did, for the most part, believe the ways in which they were connected and believe their relationships to one another. Now, you do have to suspend your disbelief a little bit here. You know, Matt does basically just fall in love with Lisa upon seeing her for the first time and then does some stalkerish things that she is apparently into, and then they fall madly in love with one another. And if you're happy to accept this sort of fast-paced relationship development, this development of feelings, then great. But if you can't accept that, then you are going to have a hard time, I think, connecting to these characters and connecting to these stories. I do enjoy the story and I do enjoy the concept. So, Josh, I do want to come to you. Did you like it? What did you think overall? Be honest. That's why we're
So
here.
overall, I struggled a little bit with this.
Did you?
I
Yeah.
did struggle
All right.
a little bit. Now, don't get me
Okay.
wrong. The fact that it looked like I was watching it off a shady DVD a bloke sold me in a pub on YouTube didn't help.
No, it's bad.
But
isn't it?
putting that aside, my issues aren't actually with the quality of the film. I'll come on to my issues because I did like some stuff.
Okay,
And
good,
I always like
good.
to be balanced about it. So overall,
Uh-huh.
I've already touched on it a little bit. The cast is great.
Yeah.
So you've got Josh Hartnett, Rose Byrne, Matthew Lillard, Diane Kruger, a couple of other people who you've seen knocking about in other stuff, but they're your main four. And they're pretty good in it for the most part. I mean, Josh Hartnett, for me, he's quite an underrated actor. I think he was typecast a little bit because maybe things like Pearl Harbor. But we talked about other films, like 40 Days and 40 Nights. And one of the things, although we did pretty much slate that film, was that he was sort of all right in it, right? So he's always pretty good in it.
And he was in Hollywood Homicide.
Of course,
so
yeah,
this
he's in
is our
Hollywood Homicide.
third
This is our
Josh
third
Hartnett film.
The Hartnett trilogy. And actually, there's another film on my list which has got him in it, which is the same director as this film.
Oh, interesting.
That might come up in a little while when we're ready for the fourth Hartnett.
Okay, yeah.
So he is pretty watchable, right? He's pretty. He does the intense thing really well.
He's very intense,
Like,
isn't he?
he does
His
it-
eyes are so intense.
Yeah, like if you look at, obviously 40 Days and 40 Nights is a comedy, right? But if you look at this with Hollywood Homicide, which is also a little bit of a comedy, but less so than 40 Days and 40 Nights, he does that intense, young, brooding guy really well. And I think he does it pretty well in this. He is very watchable. He is pretty charming because also, as well as the fact that he's pretty handsome and pretty charming and pretty cool, he also does bumbling, socially awkward quite well. He has that sort of little balance to him quite well. Again, he's more cool than socially awkward in this, but there are still bits where he's socially awkward, so he's quite watchable and charming in that bit. I think he's got a brilliant voice. I really love Josh Hartnett's voice. If you look at something like the opening of Sin City, if you've seen Sin City, he has a little cameo at the beginning and at the end of Sin City, which I think was actually put together whilst they were testing out how they were going to make it, and then they just ended up putting it in the film.
Oh, interesting.
But his voice is almost like hypnotic in places, and because it's very deep and quite smooth, and I think he's got an amazing voice for cinema. Always nice to see Matthew Lillard, although as far as I'm concerned, he should always be playing Shaggy.
Yes, indeed.
Without explanation. Like, imagine
I would have taken it. I would have taken it.
Josh Hartnett walks in, I'm in love with this girl. Like Scoop! Like, I absolutely love that.
Been all over that.
Rose Byrne, for me, is an absolute standout in this. One of the things I want to come on to in later on is that, okay, some of the performances aren't great, but I don't think that's the actor's fault. But Rose Byrne is absolutely giving it her all in this film. And I think she is considerably better than the rest of the core cast. It almost feels like she's in a different film at points because she's quite good. So it does feel like she's almost trying harder than the other people in the film, but I don't know. But obviously, we've done a few other Rose Byrne things before. The one that comes to mind is I Give It a Year.
I Give It a Year,
which she's good in that. But she's great in this. She's really, really good. She's very young as well. It's like sort of before she really broke big with things like Bridesmaids and X-Men and stuff like that. It looks really good. So despite the quality of the copy, Chicago is used a lot now for really big cinematic things. If you think of Christopher Nolan's Dark Knight trilogy, a lot of that was made in Chicago. It looks really cinematic. And then what you have going on in this film is that it's all set, or most of it is set in winter or in the snow.
Yes.
So you
Which is
have
a beautiful aesthetic.
So you have really beautiful scenes where there's really, like you say, really good aesthetic, and you can see characters' breath, and you can see, you almost feel the cold, and it does add a little something to the film for me. I thought it's quite interesting. That's obviously a choice to go. This is all set in winter, so everyone's always wrapped up, and it's not often you see that outside of Christmas films, and I quite often, if you think about it, how often does the weather get thought about in films? And it's mainly Christmas films, and there are other examples. So, like for example, in Seven, it's always raining in it, and that's because that's a stylistic choice. In this, there's a stylistic choice that it's always wintry, and I think that does add a sort of a good aesthetic to it, like you say. And then just finally, I did enjoy some of the themes of the film. So they do get into an idea of obsession and stalking, but they also add layers into it. So things like people who are sort of obsessed, also having someone obsessed with them.
It's this chain, isn't it?
Like
it's
a chain
sort of chain of obsession. It reminded me, like in Reign Over Me, where it's almost like this chain of inappropriate behavior, where one character is being inappropriate with someone, but then that character is being inappropriate with someone else, and you just sort of see how people that can almost be so not self-aware of themselves when they're kind of in that situation.
Absolutely, because you also have what you have in this is, again, so it's like you said with Reign Over Me. So Josh Hartnett's character falls for Diane Kruger's character at first sight, bang, right? Now, we've all seen the plot of man falls for beautiful woman at first sight, but we don't often see woman falls for beautiful man. And you get that in this because that's what happens with Rose Byrne's character, right? So I thought that was quite interesting. You don't often see that non-reciprocated love of a woman to a man. You often see it the other way around, but you see it in this, and both equally act pretty inappropriately, right? So I thought that was quite interesting. I thought they added some real balance to it in that, and that's and the one final thing as well is soundtrack's pretty good.
Oh,
you got this.
God,
you got the
phonics
phonics in there
with the stereophonics. I mean, I was there hook, line, and sinker. I completely forgot that it
obviously
opened that
from
way.
Wales.
Beautiful song.
Very Welsh
Beautiful
band.
song. A couple of
so
stereophonic songs in there. There was Coldplay, Aqualung.
Have a Nice Day, is it?
No,
maybe tomorrow. Maybe tomorrow.
Come on, Josh,
and then later on, there's another phonics song, and then
there is,
So I mean, I might get absolutely rinsed for this, but I really love the song "The Scientist" by Coldplay.
I like it too.
So the thing is,
it's beautiful.
Coldplay get a lot of shit now.
They do.
But early Coldplay, like Parachutes and all that, and The Rush of Blood to the Head, great albums. Like they were decent
even
albums.
Some late Coldplay I really like. Like it's. Oh, I don't know if I really understand the hate. I don't know if I do with Coldplay.
It's easy to rip Chris Martin because you think he's irritating, but at the end of the day, one of the biggest bands in the world for the same thing happens with Mumford & Sons. It's like it's trendy to hate.
Yeah.
It's trendy to hate them. It's like, but they are massive for a reason. Like
they got nickel-backed.
Yeah, just let people like what they like. And that's what we're all about here, Alice.
Indeed,
it is what we're all about here. So that's. To be honest, in a nutshell, that's pretty much what I liked about it. There are some issues, but I'm not going to kick it too much whilst you still got stuff to say. But obviously, you picked this one. What I'm interested to know is, why did you first pick this? Do you remember? As in, not for the podcast, when you thought, like, what made you go, let's watch Wicker Park with Josh Hartnett in it? Or
because Josh Hartnett was in it. Because Josh Hartnett was in it. So me and my friend Gwen, she's the friend.
Shout out, Gwen.
Shout out to Gwen, but we had like a lot in common, sort of music wise and film wise, and we both went to college together. So we'd seen 40 Days and 40 Nights. Obviously, thought that was great and hilarious. And oh my God, Josh Hartnett's so fit. And then obviously see that he was in Wicker Park, or like someone told her that he was in it or whatever. So we were like, I think we rented it from the college library and then watched it in the college library, like in some of the sort of TV, in the TV room.
Isn't that the suites with the overhead projector and all that in them?
It was a little bit like that, yeah. So that was how we got onto that. And I just remember not hating it, basically. And that's where like a lot of the films that I choose for this podcast, I just think of films I've seen that I didn't hate,
And then you look at
and
the
then maybe go
reception
back,
and-
check the
yeah,
ratings,
and,
see what happened.
I think, similar to me, that's what
Yeah.
that's what you do. You think about films you like, and then you look and you go, oh, hell, that could have kick in. I didn't think it'd get a kick in. And it's, all these things are subjective at the end of the day. Do you know what it did remind me of? And it's funny with you saying the college thing. It reminded me a little bit thematically and stylistically of the Butterfly Effect.
Yeah, I totally get that.
Not
I
obviously
totally,
take the sci-fi,
totally get that.
take the sci-fi.
Yeah. But same era, right?
And there's
Kind of
definitely an
same
element
era.
of there's definitely a time and a place where people would have loved this shit.
Yeah.
Do you know what I
Yeah,
mean?
definitely.
So
Yeah,
I
and I
think
reckon that sort of mid to late teenagers
Yeah.
are probably the target audience as
You're
well,
watching
right?
Butterfly Effect, you might stick on a Cinderella story.
Yeah.
Whatever you want. Anyway, what else did you like about it? Tell me.
So I do like that we jump between timelines in the film, and it doesn't feel the need to handhold you all the way through this. So there's no on-screen text saying 2 years earlier or
Yeah, that's a
anything
good
like
point,
that.
actually.
And though sometimes it did take me a moment or two to realise whether I was in the past or the present, I did prefer the fact that the film trusted the audience and didn't feel the need to handhold you when bouncing between the two timelines. I think the script is quite minimalist at times, and for the most part, it is more interested in showing you rather than telling you, which is something I always appreciate. So after Matt thinks he's seen Lisa for the first time in 2 years, he's meant to be heading straight off to China for a very important business meeting that could potentially define the rest of his career, it feels like. But instead, he just willingly misses his flight, which I then think helps to convey his level of obsession for this woman and just how obsessed he was with her, or slash still is, sort of thing. I know you touched on some of the visuals there, and I did quite like some of the technical choices. So there's a lot of people following other people around in this film, and it is quite stalkerish. So to show this, we get a lot of split screen. So we get one character in one part of the screen who's doing the following, and then the other character, it shows them being followed. And this was something that I don't think is too overused sort of in films in general and in the industry. So I quite liked it for that. And yeah, like you touched on, the snowy and wintry aesthetic I thought was beautiful. And then I think that there's something about that sort of conjures up feelings of romance and thriller theme in the same time. So it's sort of straddling those two genres, which I thought was quite impressive. And just finally, I think, so as the film unravels, I did feel on the edge of my seat. So you're just waiting for the characters to collide, right? And for the lies and the deception to all come to the surface, especially with Rose Byrne's character, so Alex, aka fake Lisa. So we find out that Alex was actually obsessed with Matthew before he became obsessed with Lisa. And then she had a hand in breaking them up in the past, and she told Lisa that she found him in bed with another woman. And then in the present day in the film, she's actively trying to keep them apart whilst lying to Matthew and pretending to be another woman named Lisa. And then she's making moves on Matt herself, even though she's seeing his best friend. And I think it did an all right job of kind of keeping the tension sort of amongst all these different like threads of action, shall we say.
I definitely think towards the end, that plot line with Rose Byrne's character and the Lisa and Alex thing, that's where the film excels. I do definitely think that's where the real sort of thrill of the film came, I guess.
And I think we should probably discuss Rose Byrne a little bit as well, and I guess why the film probably had more of an impact on me when I did see it for the first time. So I didn't know who Rose Byrne was going into this. Like you say, she's pretty young. This is probably one of the first like bigger things that she did. So we see her in a play with very heavy makeup on. And then we see the character Alex elsewhere going about her business. But I didn't realise that the two were the same person.
Didn't make that connection.
I didn't make that connection at first. Obviously now it's really obvious because she looks like Rose Byrne. It's like, oh, that's Rose Byrne and that actor's Rose Byrne. But I think if you don't know who the actor is, I think the makeup is heavy enough to deceive you and for you to not realise who it was. And I feel like because I didn't know who it was the first time around, so I didn't put those two and two together. So there was a bit more mystery in that regard. But nowadays, because everyone knows who Rose Byrne is, you can see her behind that makeup.
It's a bit like spoilers if you haven't seen.
Oh, what are you spoiling?
Have you seen The Prestige?
So I haven't, but I know what the twist is.
So if you haven't seen The Prestige, skip forward like 30 seconds. But it's a bit like the Christian Bale twist in The Prestige, which is you watch it and you first see it like, oh, and then when you watch it again, you go, fucking hell, it's just Christian Bale in the background.
Yeah.
So it's similar, isn't it? Yeah, I know what you mean. But maybe that's what happened. That's what happens with casting a relatively unknown actor at the time, and then them becoming a massive actor in the future. I guess it's just one of those things, like a victim of their own success sort of thing. Okay, so let's move on then to talking about things. Thangs. I'll do that again.
The thangs.
Let's talk about the
thangs.
Let's move on then to talk about things that we perhaps didn't like about Wicker Park, not the park, the film. I'm sure the park's lovely. Or things that we would change about Wicker Park, the film, not the park. I'm sure the park's lovely. Alice, I get the impression it wasn't all likes for you. You've probably got a few bits in there. So let's hear them. What would you change? What didn't you like about Wicker Park?
So, and I will preface this by saying that, yes, like we've already said, the quality of what we're watching was pretty bad. I don't know how much impact this has on it, but there were times where I wasn't 100% sure what was going on, basically. So, like, some of the stuff that was going on with Lisa when she first comes back to Chicago after the 2 years. So she's there, but then someone called Daniel is looking for her. So then she stays at Alex's place, but then Alex goes and stays at Lisa's place. But then there's also a hotel room involved. And then Daniel has keys to an apartment, but then Matt gets hold of the keys. And then I don't know what apartment they're for or why Lisa had them and where they're for. And so it was just a bit of this. And I was just like, oh, I'm going to need to watch this again to really understand what the fuck's going on. So there was a little bit of that going on. For the most part, like I said, I liked how minimalist and understated the script was. However, there were times where I think it did dip slightly into being a bit slow and a little bit boring because of that. I don't think I felt enough for the characters in general. So I feel like there could have been a bit more in the way of exposition. And this is obviously a very, very fine line to tread. I do not want you to just exposition dump and for it to be hollow and just as a way to, quick, we need to get all the information out there at any cost sort of thing. But there was just like a little bit too much missing from this. And it felt like, it felt like a book adaptation, in the way where some of the character depth was missing. And like when we've done other films.
It should have been in their head. That sort of thing, isn't it?
Yeah, I guess so. It just like when we've done other films that were adapted from books, you can feel the gaps a lot of the time. And
absolutely you can.
But I don't think this was based on a book. But I wonder if in the original film, so l'appartement, I don't know if that's how you say apartment in French, but that is what I'm trying to say when I say l'appartement. Maybe it's clearer. Like maybe that's worth a watch.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll go back and watch it and see how the story unravels in that. Maybe there's a bit more information. And there were just a few things that happened that I didn't fully believe or thought may have been a bit far-fetched. For instance, so Matt has intentionally missed his flight to China, but obviously hasn't told his girlfriend, but then he's still just kind of hanging out and walking around in Chicago like normal, which just kind of feels a bit risky. Like she even phones him and he's like pretending that he's in Shanghai sort of thing.
Doesn't he?
Yeah. But it's a bit like, oh, you are just kind of like she could be she lives there too and her dad lives there. Like if anyone sees you, anyone from that company who knows that you're meant to be in China sees you and then she finds out that you've lied, like it was all just a bit, I was also a little bit in disbelief that he would have slept with Alex. So when he stays over at Alex's, when she's being fake Lisa, because she says that she's being stalked by someone. So she's like, oh, will you stay? So I feel safe and all that. And he says, yeah, which I think is a bit weird. And then they have sex, which I also thought was a bit weird, especially because
it's not
so
that
he's
weird
maybe obsessed.
When two people like each other, Alice.
And that's totally cool, but he's got a girlfriend that he was just buying an engagement ring for.
If they're not married,
do you know what
Alice,
I mean?
it's against. That started.
So I just kind of didn't really buy that. And then the other way that I was sort of trying to look at it and perhaps justify it is that because. So when he's following Alex, it's quite hard to explain everything, but when he's following Alex, when she's pretending to be another woman called Lisa, so he thinks that she has like her shoes and her stuff and she smells like her and all this stuff. So I can believe that maybe he'd sort of emotionally charged himself up for seeing Lisa again, but then he meets this other girl, but then maybe still got like some of these residual feelings, and then that's why he sleeps with her. But I feel like that's a bit tenuous, and I just didn't fully buy that he would have slept with her.
He does seem to convince himself that a blonde woman he fancies suddenly becomes a brunette woman who looks entirely different with the same name.
Yeah.
and it's a bit
Yeah.
like, yeah. What else anyway? Before I say what else?
So that was kind of it, I can just
Okay.
see some maybe gaps in character exploration and character development, maybe a few moments that I didn't think were 100% clear. I wonder though if I watched it again, then maybe I'd get it, but do you really want a film that isn't a
Yeah.
complex sci-fi to be something that you have to watch many times
And,
over?
and
I don't
and there
know.
are plenty of films that are designed so that when you watch it again, you see more. Like,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
this isn't that.
Not
It's not.
not
It's not The
no,
Usual Suspects
no.
or Fight Club or something, is it? Where it's like, oh,
Well,
and they
yes,
all have
exactly.
this certain thing, and they all blah, blah, blah.
Mhm.
It's that's the issue, isn't it? That is the
Mhm.
and like,
Mhm.
and if I may, that was my issue with it.
Yes, go ahead, go on.
So the two big issues, and I'm just going to expand on what you said there, are the
Mhm.
script, and I'm going to break that down into plot and
Mhm.
characterization, and some general stuff as
Okay.
well. But in terms of the plot, right? Okay, let's put that to one side. That the copy was really bad. Okay, but I had to follow the plot on Wikipedia as I was watching it. Because
Wow, okay,
I
that's not
couldn't
what you
tell what was
want.
going on. I wasn't sure
Uh-huh.
what the point of stuff was.
Mhm.
I think it's good, like you say, that the skipping between time periods isn't like 2 years previously,
Yeah,
but
yeah, yeah.
it still wasn't clear when it was the past, when it was the present.
Mhm.
There's issues with exposition, like you say. So things like, we need to know what the deal is with Lisa and Matt in order for the rest of the film to make sense. But you don't get enough
Mhm.
time with them for the rest of it to have any impact. So I didn't really
Mhm.
give a shit about them. So then at the end, when they're
Mhm.
reconciled and they have this big emotional moment, I was like, I just thought, I don't care. Because I
Come
hadn't.
up to meet you, tell you
Uh,
I'm sorry. Yeah, it's meant to be this
yeah,
big
and it's like, oh my god,
emotional, like,
and it's
oh my
like they're
god, yeah,
soulmates. They're seeing each other again, and I was a bit like,
yeah.
it was like, I'm what? So some of the stuff was really unclear. Characters' motivations were unclear.
Mhm.
Characters just did stuff, like you say. He just sleeps with his friend's girlfriend for no reason in the film, and
Mhm.
it's a little bit unclear. It's like they just wanted to have a sexy people film with doing sexy people things. And then the main issue with the script, then, like you say, is the characterization. Some of the characters, mainly one, are so one dimensional. Like the
Mhm.
person who wrote this, it's like, other than Alex's character, it's like they cannot write women. Like, this
Mhm.
film would
Mhm.
absolutely not pass the Bechdel test. Do you know what I mean? There's
Mhm.
no.
Mhm.
Lisa has no characterization.
I know.
She's just
I
a
know.
beautiful woman, and
She's a
that's
dancer.
it.
Oh, she's a
and tha-
dancer. We know
and
she's a
that's it. And
dancer.
Diane
But
Kruger
that's it.
is
Yeah.
a great actor. She's
Mhm.
great in *Inglorious Bastards*. She's great in other stuff. She did Troy this year,
Oh,
which I quite
fuck
like.
yeah. Loving Glorious
And
Bastards,
it's like she's given nothing to do. She's
Mhm.
given no emotional moment. She's given no journey as a character. She's given nothing to do in this film. And she's almost empty. And the women
Mm.
in this film, the three female characters are Lisa, Alex, and Rebecca, right? Alex is brought to life by Rose Byrne. She does a great job. Some
Mhm.
of her motivations are unclear and some of her actions aren't great, but it's not presenting her to you as a protagonist or a good person or anything like
Mhm.
that. So she's all right, okay? Yeah, her only function is to be obsessed with a man, but okay, fine.
Mhm.
That's her character's function in this story, right? But Lisa has absolutely no characterization whatsoever. Like I've already said, she's just a beautiful woman. She's just default woman. Do you know what I
Mhm.
mean? And
Mhm.
Rebecca, who is the girl he wants to propose to, has no characterization. It's completely unclear why
Yeah.
Matt is unhappy with her. It's completely unclear why Matt is happy with her, or why he'd
Mhm.
want to cheat on her. Why would at the beginning of the film, he thinks he's going to propose to her, but then he gets
Mhm.
one whiff of a girl he was seeing for not that long, 2 years ago,
Mhm.
and thinks, oh,
Mhm.
I'll jib all that off because I'm going to go after this other girl, right?
Mhm.
So I had a bit of an issue with the characterization of women, the presentation of women, the fact that they were sort of empty objects
Mhm.
almost. So that was my main issue with it, really. It was saved a little bit by the acting, but I just felt like the plot didn't make sense. There was too much exposition in some places and not enough exposition in other places.
Mhm.
Character motivations were unclear, and I just found myself thinking, I'm not even sure what's going on some of the time, and I don't know why I should
Yeah.
give a shit. Do you
Yeah.
know what I
Yeah. Yeah.
mean? I
Yeah.
mean, there was
Mhm.
like I said, there was good stuff in it, but I think what annoyed me is it really wasted a good cast.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean? Like, or there was a good idea there. I know it's a sort of loose adaptation of A Midsummer Night's Dream, but I really didn't get that.
No, I didn't get that at all. I had to read that on the internet. I definitely didn't get that.
So for me, it missed the mark a little bit, I'm afraid, in that sense. There was some stuff I liked.
Wasted
There was
potential.
some stuff I liked about it, but some real issues with that script. Some real issues, and I think it's a shame, really, because it definitely could have been something. Oh, and one more thing as well. You know how you hate gum chewing?
Oh, yeah. What do you hate? What's the thing
Contact
you
lenses.
hate?
Oh,
yeah.
I
Yeah, you
can't.
hate
I
eye
can't do
stuff,
eye
don't
stuff.
you? Yeah.
And she takes
Minority Report.
She takes contact lenses out at one point. And I was like, fuck off.
You've lost me.
Dirty,
Yeah, I'm
dirty
done.
bastards.
I'm done. This is like Alice with the gum, like Alice with the fish.
It's hard to turn me off. But yeah, so overall, yeah, there was some stuff I liked, but I must say I was stretching a little bit for what I liked. But it's all about the critical reception, isn't it? So let's have a look. So I've been quite harsh there, and you didn't like some stuff as well. But as we know, these things can pan out sometimes, that doesn't necessarily mean it's not underrated. And from what you've said, I'm guessing it got a bit of a kicking. So how do I think it did? I think the audience were probably all right with it, but not raving. No, not raving, like a 6 or 7. And I think the critics probably were quite harsh on it. Maybe we're talking 4s and 5s. So what would, before you give me the critical reception, because I obviously I know you like this, and I know I've given it a bit of a kicking, but you haven't really argued that much with me, so I'm getting the impression you do sort of agree with what I'm saying.
Oh yeah, totally. Like, and the thing about the sort of characterization of the women and all that stuff, the way that I'd sort of justified it all in my head is that because it is about obsession, like it's about how people can develop these really intense, strong and inappropriate feelings for people that they don't even know. Like Matt doesn't care what sort of personality Lisa has. He falls in love with her because of the way she looks. And that's it. And because she's a dancer and all this. So it is all very surface level, shallow, and it is all very hollow. So it kind of, in my mind, it's like, oh, well, because that's what it's about, then it's sort of, I gave it a pass sort of thing. But the massive issue that you've got with that then is that you don't care about these characters. So then it's like, well, now I don't care about the film. So you've lost me sort of thing.
And why
so
does she like him?
It. Yeah,
do you know what
exactly.
I mean?
I don't know, because he's hot. Because he's hot, John.
Because he's Josh Hotnett.
Well, exactly.
Obviously, you know the scores, but what would you give it?
Oh, that's interesting. I would probably. Problem is, I did enjoy it. I don't. Maybe it's a nostalgia thing. Maybe it's my 16-year-old brain just sort of can't let it go or whatever. But I would definitely be within the 6s.
Right.
And I think I'd definitely maybe give it a high 6, I reckon.
Well, let's hear it then. How did it do?
All right. So over on IMDb at the time of recording, it gets 6.9.
Okay. So about what you said.
Yeah. So on Rotten Tomatoes, I was a little bit surprised by this, but the audience gave it 79%.
Wow.
That's pretty good. That's pretty good, though, isn't
it?
But then the critics, and this was the number that sort of made me think, well, that's got to go on the list, doesn't it? The critics gave it 27%.
Wow.
Which is quite low, isn't it? And so the critics' consensus, and they do kind of, it's basically all the things that you said, but the critics' consensus is implausible coincidences and an overly convoluted structure make the movie hard to follow or believe. And then a lot of the really negative reviews were all highlighting the fact that the characters wouldn't have had any of these problems if they just picked up their mobile phones, right? That's
a good point.
Which I do sort of get. But my argument against that would be, obviously it's based, or it's a remake of a film from 1997, right? So mobile phones not really a thing. And then this come out 2004. So just kind of on the cusp of mobile phones being a thing. So then it's like, oh, like how do we get around that sort of thing? So they do just seem to have ignored the fact that
seem to ignore mobile phone. That's true. I didn't even clock on to that. So those scores average out at just above, so round it down, 58%.
Okay.
So what would you say?
So I do reckon that's underrated, but just a little bit. Like it's not. I'm not here sitting saying this is a masterpiece. I know what it is, and I can definitely see the issues with it. But for some reason, I just enjoyed it. So I would say that it's underrated. I am definitely going to say that it's underseen because there's no way anyone's going to watch that film as it is on YouTube. It's fucking ridiculous. Someone please sort it out. Get us a good quality. I want the HD version. I will pay for it. I'm here. Take my money.
I almost
Absolutely.
bought the DVD.
Did you?
I
I
was
thought
like,
you might.
I can't. And then I looked, I was like, it was like a tenner. I was like, I can't pay a tenner for this.
No, you can't
I
justify
can't do it.
that,
58, then what? It is underseen. Because if you look at who's in it, and it's probably, like you say, didn't make his budget back, it's underseen.
Didn't make his budget back. It's not anywhere.
58, I'll be honest, mate, that for me is probably overrated.
It's a bit overrated.
Yeah, but it is underseen, so we'll put it out. I mean, the weird things with these is, if people haven't seen it and we put it out for a vote, quite often no one will be able to say what they think.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? So
because it's underseen as well. So I think I am happy to concede on this one because I think it's underrated. That doesn't necessarily mean that it is underrated. Do you know what I mean when I say that? Obviously, because with something like with Grease 2 or perhaps Ewoks, like I think they are genuinely good films and that everyone is wrong. Whereas with this, I think I'm just an outlier here. And I just like it because of my experience with it.
And that's a good, and that's a fair point. It's back to that subjective nature, nostalgia for it. The nostalgia for this. I mean, I suppose just to finish, do you think if you watch this now, having not seen it in college, you'd have the same? You'd have the same reaction, or do you think you would?
I don't know.
Same.
I don't know. I think I probably would have picked up on more of the issues because I went into it as well feeling soft about it. So then in those instances, then you don't rip into it perhaps as much as you could. But with other films we've watched, and maybe with some of the ones that you pick, I do go into it thinking, right, well, what's the representation like? What are the women up to? How do the characters develop and all this? And I think I went into this wanting to like it, and therefore I did. So I feel like I perhaps haven't done my job properly here.
But no, that's the nature of this podcast, though, isn't it? Is we pick the films because we've seen them before and we have some sort of affection for them. So you're going to go into it. Like you say, we don't go into each other's films thinking, like, I'm going to smash this to bits. Like, we're all about optimism. But sometimes you get Wicker Park and sometimes you get, other films. Sometimes you get Rain Over Me or sometimes you get other... I'm trying to think of one off the top of my head that you picked that I was pleasantly surprised by.
Well, you picked Mouse Hunt, and I thought that was sick.
Yeah,
that was brilliant.
I think what's one that you've picked that I've
have I picked one that you like?
You definitely have. You've definitely picked one.
Are you sure? We'll have to go back.
No,
over the
you
list.
definitely have. I'm just trying to think of them. Like, Pop Star, at the top of my head. Although I'd seen that before. Let me think.
Yeah,
I can't think of one that there's definitely got to be one in there.
Have a little look because you've got. We're not leaving until you figure this out. Thinking.
No,
so you didn't like Grease 2. You didn't like Speed 2. You didn't really like Ewoks. What else have I picked?
Do you know what? Like Imperium, Spice, Imperium, Spice World.
Spice World was brilliant, wasn't it? Ooh,
Catfish was all right. They're all ones. Enduring Love was in there as well. So there are ones.
Yeah, but that was on your list.
But the point is sometimes this happens. So we will put it out to the guys, but split decision, but underseen. So there we go, another one in the bag, underseen, but split decision. We'll stick it out there on the social media. You see what you think. You never know. Sometimes you guys out there surprise us. Some big Josh Hartnett fans and Matthew Lillard fans and Rose Byrne fans and Diane Kruger fans or whatever. As ever, we try and give a balanced argument, and we will be back next week, Alice, won't we, with another film in your ears to be announced soon. In the meantime, if you'd like to get in touch with us, it's filmsandthatpod@gmail.com. We're on all the social medias. Just search for Just Films and That. We're on Facebook, TikTok, Twitter, Instagram. You can find us, get in touch with us. We always like to hear from you. And we're also on the television, aren't we, Alice?
We are indeed. Every Friday from 6 p.m, you can find us on the local TV network. So if you live in Birmingham, Bristol, Leeds, Liverpool, or the northeast of England, you can find us on Channel 7 on Freeview. Or if you live in North Wales or South Wales, you can find us on Channel 8 on Freeview. Or if you have Sky and you live anywhere in the country, you can find us on Channel 188. That is every Friday from 6 p.m. Me and Josh had a little chat about all our favourite underrated and underseen films.
Yes, lots of ways to see us, hear us, get in touch with us. We always like to hear from you. And of course, thank you as ever for listening and for your support. It really does mean a lot. We'll be back next week with another film. It's goodbye from me. Cheerio.
Bye.